Today's episode, we talked about project management and what that means here at Reisinger Build. I think the key takeaways here that we really kind of touched on were one, the 5 pillars of good project management. And we talked about that project management is not just an individual, it's a team effort. And then one last thing is that really project management starts before the project begins in the planning phase. So yeah, it's a broad topic that I think we could probably speak even more about, but I think we get through the details of it today.
In your mind, how do you think people typically understand project management as it relates to home building in general?
Yeah, I think people have the perception that project management is a person who is on the job site watching the workers work and has a set of plans and is making sure that the people doing the work are following the plans, that it kind of ends there. And I think in some instances that may be true. In production homes, when a project manager is managing 28 houses at once, that's all they can do, really. But for us, it's quite a bit different than that. Project management is not a person, it's a team.
Right.
We need more than just somebody watching people work. That doesn't get the job done, right? And project management doesn't start when the house starts being built. It starts before that, during the planning phase.
I remember many, many years ago when I first started, I worked for a builder that was a true tract home production builder for a brief period of time. Mm-hmm. And those houses were built in 45 days.
Wow.
All right. And it was a recipe. It was a checklist. That you knew exactly what to do. There was no change in the plan. It was really simple, straightforward. Everything you needed to know was there, and it had been done many times before. It was houses that got built. Each plan was built 100 times at least.
Yeah.
And the only changes were colors, right? And so that's a very easy recipe for anyone to follow because it's just like making sure that people who are supposed to be there are there, making sure materials that are supposed to be there are there. That's it. That's project management in that world.
Right.
But in our world, there's a lot of difference. So kind of what are the extra things that project management staff is doing in the custom world?
Sure. Well, like I said, it starts before construction. We only build each home that we build once. There's no rinse and repeat. It's a one-off. Each one is a one-off. The project manager is not just somebody who has a checklist. It is somebody who is there during the design phase that helps with input on constructability. They help with developing the estimate of construction costs. They help with planning the schedule, and they help with the communication of the team. So they're sort of like the head of the team because it's not just one person. Our projects are large enough and complex enough that it requires not only an assistant project manager in some cases, the project manager. There's also you and I who are the leadership team. And then we've got construction site managers who are on site, keeping the sites clean, managing the safety protocols that we have in place. So it's a team effort.
Right.
And the project manager is coordinating all of those things.
Right. And I think that's right. And a good way I view it is there's this at least 3 or 4 tier approach where there's an individual or a team managing the site itself, not the project, but the site. Mm-hmm. There's an individual who's tasked with managing the workflow on the site, making sure everything's there that needs to be there and the people are there and they're continuing to work efficiently.
Right.
And then there's another layer of maybe higher layer of someone who's managing the administration of the work, right? The estimate flow and the work and the invoice flow and the accounting or bookkeeping that needs to be done, and the communication flow with the team of
submittals,
design
and RFIs,
professionals, all those things. And so, and then you may have a senior project manager or director of construction like yourself, or even the builder, sort of helping solve complex, high-level problems and making sure that everything is orchestrated correctly.
Right. And one of those efforts that is important for the project manager to have a handle on is that communication flow. It's knowing or disseminating the information to the players on the team that need to know it when they need to know it. And that's not easy to do when you have a team and things are moving at a rapid pace. So you've got your assistant construction or your assistant project manager who's on site with the framer, and they've discovered an issue that can't necessarily be solved right away. Well, that communication has to go back to the project manager, because a project manager will then know, okay, can I answer this in the plans? Can I answer this by submitting an RFI? Do I need to know this quicker? Can I directly communicate with the architect? That communication flow is a key part of it. There's so many steps involved, hundreds, maybe 1,000 steps involved in building one of these homes. And there isn't a recipe, right?
No.
We have historical sort of experience of how we do things, but every house is different and has its own unique flow to it. And so it is the project manager's job, whether that's senior project manager or project manager, to understand the needs of that project and develop that schedule and sequencing so that the parts that need to be in place for the next step are there when they need to be, and the materials that need to be on hand have been ordered, and they sort of orchestrate all of that as well.
Yeah. And you can't stress enough the importance of good planning. And the earlier that planning process can start on any given project, the higher the chance of success. But the plan is just that. It is a plan. Mm-hmm. And because it is a custom project that's going to have a number of iterations during construction, the plan will change. And so the project manager's job is not just to execute the plan as it's originally, but to manage the evolution of the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the hardest job of all, I think, is really understanding the moving parts and adjusting daily, sometimes hourly, to the understanding of the plan and new information flow as it comes in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Matt one time used the analogy of some famous general in the military once said that a plan works really well until the first shot is shot. Then it has to change.
Yeah.
And with every action, you need to adjust the plan to make sure or verify that it's even still accurate to move forward. And so in that case, the project managers or senior project managers' primary goal would be to manage the evolution of the plan.
Yeah. Part of the project management team's responsibility is to develop a schedule. And that schedule, like the estimate, is only as accurate as the information that the team has. And that as that evolves, then you can sort of evolve that schedule. But once that schedule is developed, it needs to be adhered to, because that is our plan, right? And so the only way to efficiently stay within schedule is to plan ahead. Not only understand the sequencing, but look through the plans and determine, okay, what information is missing? What do I need before I need it?
Right.
And, that can't be done 100% because of the complexity of things. But the more the more questions you can have answered before you get to the point of getting to that phase, the more smoothly that project goes from a schedule standpoint.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why we require a team, because it's difficult for one person to do that and to administer the site on a daily basis.
Right.
There's not enough hours in the day to do that.
Right. And of this project management staff, whether it's one individual for a fairly simple, straightforward job or a whole team for a more complex job, what does it look like as far as the time required to be on site by those individuals and the time required for them to be in a controlled office environment for them to do more complex administrative coordination?
Yeah, I think it's so. Again, every project is different, but I think the way that I view it, generally speaking, is as you sort of go from assistant PM to senior PM to director of construction, the less as you go up, the less time that person needs to be on site. The assistant project manager, in my mind, is pretty much on site all the time. Not necessarily 100% of the time, but almost always. Project manager on a complex project that has the two of them should be there quite a bit. But that administrative stuff needs to be done. Now, oftentimes we have job site trailers, so there is an office space on the site. But in lieu of that, then there's the space that we have here, so they need to be there. But when it comes to me, for example, who's overseeing all of these projects, it doesn't make sense for me to be on site very much at these projects. I do most of my work in the office, so I have visibility into all the projects. And when it's needed, I can go to site and solve a problem, or figure something out if I have to. But really, I think as you go up, the less time you spend on site. And I think what's interesting about that is, from a client standpoint, we bill all of these individuals on the management team on an hourly basis. Just like with our cost plus contracting transparency, it's the same way with our project management as well. You're only billed for the time that person is working on your project. Now, I think something that is a misconception with that is that doesn't mean they're on site, right? You're not just billing them for the time that you're on site. You're billing them for the time that you're working on their project, which could be in the office, not on site.
Right.
Which I don't know that we've ever really gotten pushback on that, but I think from the outside looking in, that could be a question that people have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to point out that a given project manager, assistant project manager, senior project manager doesn't spend 40 hours a week on a given project. It's just there are too many other administrative things that they have to do that are not specific to a given project. And so I think it's anticipated that project managers probably spend 30 to 35 hours a week managing a given project. Mm-hmm. The other 5% of their time, they're developing their process and maybe filling their truck up with gasoline or just doing,
and those things are not billed to the client.
That's right. And so they don't pay for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about that for a second. What is the general costs of project management? I mean, I think we don't need to talk specifically about salaries, but I think, is it like just an hourly fee that we have developed that is based on some metrics?
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, we view the project management team as a cost of the work. There's no builder's fee associated with it. It is a separate cost, but it has the hourly rate that we have developed, which is in line with the market rates, is set up in such a way that we are not making tons of money off of it, but we're covering the cost of that person,
right?
Given that they work 30 to 35 hours a week on a project.
So it's calculated as a reimbursable cost.
Right.
We're getting reimbursed for a cost of that individual, but not really making any money on it because we're not putting builder fee on top of it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In your mind, what are the pillars of good project managers? So what could you identify as the key things that we look for in good project management staff members?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up my little handy dandy sheet here. I think there are 5 pillars of good project management. And I think the first one is not just a pillar of good project management, but really it's the key to success of any project, and that is communication. You have to have the ability to, like I sort of alluded to or spoke about before, is you have to communicate to all the people all the time and know who are the people that need that information when they need it. And because we do everything in a very transparent way, you have to be able to speak candidly to the architect, to the clients, to the other people on the project management staff, whether that be good news or bad news. And, we always say bad news first. we really believe in that communication needs to be open and honest at all times. So that's pillar number one, communication, and that's huge. Number two is our estimate management. So they have to be really on top of all the costs of the project, both past costs and how they fit in with the estimate, but also forecasting what the costs are going to be as the design develops or the evolution of the project changes. And with that, developing a cost to complete as you near completion so you can, again, communicate that information to the client and to the team really well. The other one is schedule tracking. Tracking is, I guess, is maybe a misnomer there because it is also development. So development and tracking. And having a handle on, okay, what are everyone's expectations on how long this project should take? And then building the house to that schedule, but then knowing that there are changes, there are hiccups, there's 30 days of rain or something like that, and not only sort of communicating that information and adjusting the schedule accordingly, but really finding ways to then make up for that lost time. If there is a delay for some reason, the project management team needs to think about, okay, how can I adjust my sequencing in such a way that doesn't affect the quality of the project, but can maybe condense that schedule a little bit in a unique way.
Right.
And then quality control. You know, we speak to fine craftsmanship quite a bit, but it's more than just that. It's the framing, it's the foundation, it's all of the things. So the project management team needs to not only sort of oversee and ensure quality, but really instill in the tradespeople doing the work the sense that the quality matters. And so before they even pick up the hammer or before they start cutting pipe or whatever it is, that they are aligned with the goals of the project and the level of quality that's expected of them. And then from there, sort of follow through and oversee that that's actually happening. And then finally, decision management. Like we talked about before, there's thousands of decisions or steps that go into building a home. And you have a very specific set of plans that has nearly all the information, but not all the information. So it's not only, you know, making decisions about incomplete information, but also decisions about constructability. You know, the drawings are lines on a piece of paper, and we're in the field working with actual stuff that gets put together. And so making decisions about how that comes together is really important. In addition to, from a building science standpoint, is this going to last for as long as we want it to last? And making sure that those decisions in the field are being made when they need to be made.
I want to dig a little deeper into each one of those because I think that's the crux of the conversation about project management, making sure that the project managers and us, the builder, are executing each one of those components that speaks to good project management well. For example, let's start with communication. What does good communication from the project management staff look like? Now, who are they communicating to? How often are they communicating? What kind of information are they communicating on a regular basis?
Probably have a whole podcast just about that.
And we'll probably come back to
but
that.
I'll condense it as best as I can with getting the point across. So what we do is we have a process where on a weekly basis, typically it's Friday, the project management team puts out a weekly update. And that is a written document that summarizes the work that's been done that week, the work that's coming up in the next week, any challenges that we may have faced and how we overcame them, or if we haven't yet, what the plan is to do that. Any sort of action items that exist, whether it's, something that the architect needs to do or the decision the client needs to make, or even internally something that Reisinger Build needs to do, we let the team know that that's the case. And then there's, a series of pictures that are taken and put in this document just as to memorialize. Sometimes our clients can't make it to the site, and maybe they're out of town, out of town, or they live somewhere else entirely. And so this is a way for them to sort of follow along in the progress. That document gets sent out by email to the clients, to the design team, and to the leadership team here at Reisinger Build. Two is we have a weekly meeting with the client. oftentimes also with the architect. But that sort of depends a bit on what the agreement is between the client and the architect and
Right.
how
Right.
much the architect is involved. And those weekly meetings are either on site or via Zoom, or here in our conference room. And those meetings typically they are similar to the project updates, but we're allowed to then get information transferred in real time, so we can get answers from questions immediately or speak in more depth about a particular topic to the clients and to the design team. So, in addition to those weekly meetings, we have periodic meetings to speak to the financials. So, estimate updates. As the project develops and the estimate develops, we go through that. And towards the end of a project, that includes cost to completes. And so, what is remaining in that estimate to be spent and how that is diminishing and what does that look like over the next 3 or 4 months?
Right. And I think one important phrase that I would like to get across is the qualification of the estimate. So it's the project management staff's job to communicate to the team how potentially accurate or inaccurate or what the estimate itself is based on, the information it's based on.
Yeah,
So
right.
some things in the estimate as the project develops may be pretty well, yeah, we know this. We've got all the information. We've identified all the unknowns, and therefore we feel good about this number. But these numbers, we really don't. We need more information from the design team. We need more selections from suppliers, or, what are the finishes here, whatever.
Yeah.
So that each month or every other month, whenever we review the estimate, we can express a degree of certainty, if you want to use that phrase,
Right.
about the estimate itself.
Yeah. And that speaks to also the sort of constant communication that we try to have is so that we don't get too far down the road without having these conversations.
Right. Schedule. Now, again, I don't think there's a lot to talk about that other than just keeping the team updated on schedule as it evolves. We use a Gantt type scheduling tool. As one element of the schedule is adjusted, it affects everything that is in any way critical path to that element. I think most people understand how schedules work, but it wouldn't hurt for the project management staff to sort of communicate the fine details of how the budget is evolving.
Yeah. Typically when we're communicating.
I don't mean budget, I mean schedule.
Yeah, sure. Typically when we're communicating schedule, we kind of do it on a micro and a macro level. The micro is really an outlook over the next 3 weeks. This is what you can expect to see. And then the macro, we don't get into every single line item or every single step of phase. We break it down into phases. This is the framing stage and it's going to start and finish here. This is the mechanical rough-in phase and it'll start and finish here. And as the project develops and things shift, we communicate those shifts. But they're too complex to go through all the things all the time. It's a bit overwhelming. But also, I should know one thing that we do with this Gantt chart is we set a baseline. Once we start the project, we develop the schedule and set a baseline. And then we work against that baseline. So then that shows us where we are in comparison to it. So are we behind schedule or ahead of schedule? And we typically sort of will set a new baseline at the end of every major phase. We still have that initial baseline, and from the initial, we know where we stand. But as the project develops and things develop, it's not quite as useful to go back to that original baseline. For example, we had a project that had an extremely complex and large-scale foundation phase. And we projected a number of months for this project, for that portion of it to take, and the entire project was based on that idea. Well, as we got into the actual foundation itself, there was a lot more rock than was expected. The geotech, when we did it, didn't hit all the spots. And so the foundation phase ended up taking 50% longer than what we had expected. And, we knew that as we went through, and we kind of worked against that. But then, you're starting your framing phase that many months behind already. And so it's not then as informative when maybe if you finish your framing phase on time, that's not reflected in the actual date. So
Right.
we kind of reset that. And this is all, again, communicated as you go. Hopefully this doesn't happen on every project, but sometimes it does. And it just is a more informative way to let the clients and the architects know where you are in the schedule at any given moment.
Right. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Good. All right, let's talk about quality control. In my mind, the most important thing that a home builder does is ensure that the home is built correctly, that it's built to the utmost quality, if you want to use that phrase. We often use in our world the phrase when we want to look for cost efficiencies is to value engineer things, right? What can we value engineer in this project that will make it more cost efficient for the client? And we've discovered that the most difficult thing to value engineer is quality, because the shortest path to failure is to try to cut corners. Nobody wants to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to focus primarily on building the project correctly, building it where it will last a long time, will require a lower cost of maintenance and repair, monthly use. And therefore, I think it's important to say that as we go through the process, the clients should expect us to focus primarily on quality.
Yeah. I think, too, quality somewhat starts in the planning phase and speaks to constructability.
Right.
If you have drawings that haven't been vetted for constructability, it's hard to implement that in the field, that quality. Whether those are flashing details or insulation details or structural details. But let's say we have all of those things. It's the project manager's job to really hone in on the details and make sure that they're implemented correctly. So let's say you have a fantastic set of plans that has all of the flashing layers lined out perfectly. We still have to make sure that that's done, right? Because one small mistake, something overlapped in the wrong direction, can be catastrophic. And so it's really important for the project management team to not only have the understanding of constructability and how those things work, but to be able to review work on site as it's happening and course correct if needed. And so I think that is a huge part of the quality control. It's also making recommendations about materials that are being used and how compatibility, how things come together or don't come together. And so there's, everything from what is the finish or what is the edge detail on the countertop to how did we actually put the slab together. It runs the gamut. Quality is not just pretty things or structural things, it's all the things.
Right. And I think project design professionals and clients rely on us for a lot of those quality details. Sometimes we have the benefit of a design team having enclosure specialists that will dictate certain quality control details, but oftentimes we don't. And we're left to be the authority on how's the best way to flash this? How's the best way to weatherize it? How's the best way to air seal it? And of course, we have lots and lots of experience in that. And the clients will observe us spending lots and lots of time making sure those details are done correctly and testing ourselves to make sure that the tests prove up that the quality is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Finally, helping the design team and the clients make decisions. That speaks to communication, I think, right?
Yeah, it does.
Which is a process that looks like what? How does that information flow and that decision-making process work? Are there time limits? Are there RFIs issued?
So I think the decision management, yes, it's all communication. It is inherently tied to schedule. In a perfect world, all the decisions are made before you start construction. That's not realistic. That doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
And so it's the project manager's management team's job to. So we have a schedule of decisions that we put out that says by this phase, we need to have made all of these decisions. By this phase, all of these decisions. And so it's not only laying that out, but enforcing it as well. But yeah, there are other things like RFIs, for example, where you come across a lack of information that you need clarified or explained or even developed. Hopefully those are found early on, but sometimes those are sort of on the fly as you go. And so setting forth that clearly so that the design team knows exactly what it is that they need to fill in and giving them deadlines for that, saying, okay, we need this information by this date, and this is the reason why, because we are in this phase. Again, there are lots and lots of decisions to be made, but it's all tied to schedule to keep that schedule moving forward, having those decisions made at the appropriate times.
Right. And we have a document that I think is part of our contract documents that says, in general, this is what the design team and the clients can expect. We need these decisions by this phase of work. We need these decisions by this phase of work. So it sort of keeps them in general on track as far as the task ahead of them for making design decisions or selections or whatever. Yeah. And I think that works pretty well. All right, well, let's shift to lessons learned. Okay. You and I have been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to project management, what are one or two things that you have learned about the requirements of a project management staff on a given project?
So I would say the first one that comes to mind is, I mean, you and I like to be in control of stuff. And in the past, I have found myself not being a team player and really trying to do all the things myself. And that has a direct effect on schedule. Because if I'm the person who is in charge of all of the things, then I have to be a lot of places at once, which means work has to slow down. I'm mostly speaking to when I worked for myself.
Yeah.
And now being a part of a team here and seeing the value in delegating roles and the efficiency of that, I think that the clients generally see that value and should see that value because it's there. They hire Reisinger Build, which is a company, not a single individual like I was before.
Right.
And so they expect that level of attention to their project of multiple people being on the job.
And I think it requires, in my experience, what I've learned is that for decades, and I've used this phrase before, home building has been a seat of the pants industry. And it was generally, small home building companies were builder individuals who were doing everything. Yeah. They were the assistant project manager, they were the project manager, they were the senior project manager, they were the bookkeeper, the administrator, they were doing everything.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. And I can tell you from experience that very few people have a brain that can switch from one specialty task to the next specialty task efficiently and effectively. People have strengths and weaknesses. We have staff members that are really good at finished details, and they can dig into, once a house is drywalled, they can dig into it and finish it off crisp and clean and beautiful better than others. We have other project managers that are like structural gurus. They can assemble a structure and the enclosure details really well, right? And the level of detail and quality that goes into that is something to be inspirational. However, those are not necessarily the same people who would guide the project all the way through. It may take more than one individual. We may shift responsibility during construction where we have one team leader who's really good at one thing, and then part of the way through construction, there'll be somebody else who takes over a leadership role because that's their specialty. That's what they're better at.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so it takes an army. It takes a village to build a house. It's not one individual. It's a team.
Yeah.
And I think that's the core of the conversation we're having here is what all goes into project management, and it's generally more than one person.
Yeah. I would say another lesson learned that's, I think maybe a lot of us are victim to this, but is to develop a process so that we are working proactively instead of reactively. It's difficult to do on a fast-moving job site that's complex because you do have to react to things that you didn't foresee. But the more proactive you can be in the planning of the upcoming phases with your team, the less you actually have to react to things in real time.
Yeah, you and I have used this phrase before. That key individual in project management is the individual who can build the house in their head.
Yeah.
They see a plan. They understand the design intent. They've talked to the client. They've talked to the architect. They talked to the interior design team, all the engineers, and they now understand how it's going to get assembled before it actually gets done.
Right.
So they can implement all the planning components necessary for the site project manager, whoever is managing the project on the site, to actually execute the work.
That's right.
As long as that plan has been thoroughly vetted and thought through and the constructability issues resolved before you get there. Now, that's not always possible. There are still some things that have to be resolved during construction as you come across them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just the nature of, prototypical projects.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But ideally, the two different expertise or skill sets make a project more successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so what do you think key takeaways from this is? For me, it's that project management is a team effort and that it starts before construction. Those are the big things that I think people need to understand, at least working with Reisinger Build.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think getting to know the project management staff during design so that as builders, you and I can introduce the team to the design professionals and to the client so that they know who they potentially may be working with, have that communication line going so that the project management staff is not just reacting to plans, but they've been part of the plan, is key.
Yeah.
It really is. It's important for the project success.
I agree. So that does it for another episode of Work in Process. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or want to reach out to us regarding a project, email us at hello@reisingerbuild.com and follow us on Instagram at reisingerbuild_ATX.